Push button.
All right, well, good afternoon. I want to thank Mayor Gimenez for bringing together really the people that make Dade County work, our mayors. The mayors here are on the ground. They have to deal not only with COVID response, but everything that affects their constituents' daily lives. They're really the ones that make it happen. So I want to thank you guys for coming. Appreciate all your hard work. You know, being a mayor when you're in a position of any executive responsibility, particularly mayor, you know, it's not about Republican, Democrat, it's about getting things done. And we're in a situation now here in Miami-Dade County in particular, where we see you know, some of the metrics have risen, certainly the number of positive tests, which are an indicator, but not necessarily the most important. But we have seen, of course, increases in visits to the emergency department and in hospital admissions, particularly over the last 3 weeks. And if you look at it, what's happened in Broward, a lot of the hospital admissions, particularly in the southern part of Broward County, are from Miami-Dade residents. And so as we look throughout the state, there's a lot of challenges to deal with COVID-19 in different corners of the state. We are seeing probably numbers that are more manageable in most other parts of the state. You know, Dade right now is the place where we're seeing the most spread, and then obviously the most clinical.
So that, you know, we can move forward. Doesn't mean we're always going to agree. It doesn't. But at least you understand why certain decisions, you know, are made, and hopefully we can all agree to that. And Dan, you're right. Oliver Gilbert's always talking about you for some reason or another. Okay, but anyway, we do talk to each other a lot. And Governor, I know that you know, we speak just about every day. And thank you again for your leadership. Thank you for bringing us together, and also thank you for the resources that you're bringing down here to Miami-Dade County. This community is really very grateful for the work you've done for us and the residents of the state of Florida.
No, absolutely. One thing I think that I'm seeing here in particular that is concerning, that I think we definitely need to message about is, you know, we saw when these positive tests started happening, you know, pretty much across the state, everyone was seeing, and really across the Sun Belt, you were seeing a big uptick in positive tests amongst people in their 20s and their 30s. And right now in Florida, the #1 demographic by far that is tested positive is 25 to 34. Now, obviously, that demographic is just less risk. You look at any age stratification, that's just the reality, particularly if you don't have an uncontrolled comorbidity. You know, you're likely to fight off the illness. At the same time, you know, it spreads quickly there, and then it can spread to other people. And I think what we've seen here in Miami-Dade is, you know, there are now more cases amongst 65 and up, you know, than there had been. We had kind of where the young were crowding out. You know, there's more cases everywhere, you know, obviously, but I think you've seen that here, and obviously that's concerning because, you know, those are the folks who are going to be the most vulnerable to the most severe clinical consequences of this. And so we've done a lot on long-term care facilities, which is obviously very significant. And if you look in the state of Florida, half of the COVID-related fatalities have been amongst the less than 200,000 seniors who live in long-term care facilities. And so you have basically the same amount for the 21.5 million who don't live in long-term care as you do just there. So it is an important issue, and we've worked really hard on it. But then you also have folks who aren't in those facilities who are 65 and up, and I think that, you know, what we're seeing is family get-togethers with folks who are younger, multi-generational. They're not sick, so they're asymptomatic. I mean, I don't think that they're trying to do this, but you definitely have seen more spread reach some of the older population, particularly here in Miami-Dade County. There's other counties where you really haven't seen that as much. Here is one. So that is definitely a concern. I think Carlos said, you go back 3 weeks when the hospitalizations were ticking up, it was skewing noticeably younger than what it was in March and April. Now they're starting to see that age creep up, where you're starting to see, you know, people who are older. That is significant because of the outcomes that you'll see. I think they're generating some pretty doggone good outcomes compared to March, April, really across the board. but your odds are going to be less the more you get into the elderly population. And so that's just something that's very, very significant, as we're looking for. One good piece of news, I think Carlos could attest, is the admissions from long-term care facilities are down from where they were. Part of that is because we're working on keeping infections out of the nursing homes. We're now doing, I've mentioned before, 190,000 tests every 2 weeks for every staff member at every long-term care facility in the state of Florida. This is over 4,000 facilities. When someone tests positive, they're being isolated. Fortunately, the positivity rate is like 2.8%, something like that, which is much less than statewide right now. And so that's important. That obviously prevents the most significant outbreaks. But the general population, 65 and plus, we've advised, all the phases we've done, we've always advised 65 and plus to limit contact outside the home, close contact, and avoid crowds. Now, obviously, I'm not going to arrest someone that's 65 just because they leave their home. But what we're trying to say is, there is prevalence of this in the community, particularly in Miami-Dade. So if you were in those at-risk groups, please take care to protect yourself. If you're not in the at-risk groups, please understand that you could be an asymptomatic carrier, and you should do what you can to limit your contact with at-risk groups. So hopefully, with some of the messaging that we're seeing, and look, the test results we get are really, that's like sometimes 2 weeks old in terms of the behavior, in terms of when that infection happened, when they took the test, when it gets reported. So sometimes that's a lagging indicator, and I think there's been a lot of great messaging here from the community. I think people realize that we need to turn it in a more positive direction. So hopefully we'll start seeing that, but that is definitely a concern, that I have. I want to just give, Carlos, you just want to say a few things, and Jeanette, and then I have a couple questions just for the mayors, just to get some input on some of the issues.
Thank you, Governor, Mayor Gimenez, and the rest of the mayors. As I was looking around the room, I can tell you that I've known most of you, one since his birth, and the rest of you from the time that you had no white hairs or had hair. And I know that this group together can do the things that we need to do in this community to be able to bring this down, in my opinion. As I was preparing for these comments, I will tell you that in the last 14 days, we have averaged a 28% positivity rate in Miami-Dade County. And we have seen the number of patients in beds grow by 700 over that same 14-day period. Now, yesterday, we kind of flattened out from today. That's the good news, but that's still 50 patient per day of increase. Now, I will tell you, speaking on behalf of all the hospitals in Dade County, but really it's in South Florida, we have some great healthcare workers, as you all know, doctors and nurses that are doing a great job. But we also have some great professional administrators that are balancing every day the number of census that we have as it relates to how we shift from non-COVID patients to more COVID patients. At Jackson alone, I can tell you that today we have 1/3 of our patients are COVID patients. But the census has not changed from 30 days ago when we had half as many COVID patients as we do today. And that's the kind of work that's happening in every hospital as we continue to grow the kind of COVID patients to be able to manage this. And we're comfortable that the next several weeks we can continue to do this, but we can't do this forever. And it really, and I hear what you're saying, listen, testing and contact tracing is all important, but even if we really, today we started to really quadruple the number of contact tracing we're doing, you'll see several weeks or a month before you see the action to that. We don't have a month in front of us. We have to do something now. So what I need to see from everyone here that we all need to do is use your police departments, firefighters, all municipal workers, all public officials to be out there being ambassadors and enforcing the mask as a way to get this done. And I know, Mayor Suarez, you talked about the aggressive, non-compliant people, and there are a lot of people out there that flatly refuse to wear a mask and flatly refuse to be social distant. And unfortunately, we can't do much about those, but we need to make sure that those are the very minimal minorities, because otherwise we're not going to be able to get this turned around the way we need to turn it around. I really believe that this group can do this. I also believe that the work that was done here countywide as far as creating the curfew and reducing some of the actions as it relates to restaurants and so forth, it's going to take a little while to see what happened. We did that a week ago, and I think it's going to take another week to 10 days, maybe 2 weeks to see the action, but I think we'll start improving. As that happens, there'll be a laggard from the number of beds. So the goal is to, by first week of August, to start seeing the number of beds actually minimizing. And we can comfortably manage, not comfortably, with a lot of stress and a lot of hard work, we can manage these beds and COVID patients. Our people, our healthcare workers have been at this now, we're on our 5th month, and they're tired, they're stressed. And no, I can assure you that every healthcare worker, none of them want to lose one patient. And they cry over every patient going to be 40 years of age or 98 years of age. So we want to make sure that we can continue to do the work that we're doing, but we need the cooperation from the entire community. And you mayors around here representing the community can help us a lot by making sure that everybody is compliant as best we can. So, and I know you all, I know that you could do it, but thank you again to all of you. Governor, again, thank you very much for putting this together, and we are going to continue to work together to make this happen.
Great.
Great. Thank you, Governor. It's such a pleasure to be here with all the mayors. What you see here in Miami-Dade County is a microcosm of our state. We are indeed a diverse state, and I think nowhere is that more evident than here in Miami-Dade County. You've got mayors from big cities, small cities, urban, rural, and I think that that is a testament to the leadership with Mayor Gimenez and all of the respective city mayors. So thank you for the hard work, because you are indeed the leaders that are responsible for your constituency and also have the trust built in to help us with those messaging points that you've heard: social distancing, compliance with the mask ordinances, making sure that sanitation is continued. And so all of those things I think are critical. But the other thing I do want to say and stress is that through the beginning, the onset of this pandemic, we have been faced with unique challenges, and the governor has met those challenges head on. At the beginning, when we couldn't get testing, he worked diligently to bring more testing, and you see that in the numbers that we have tested today. We've also been able to work diligently to make sure that we can get our hospitals the remdesivir that they need. That's something that the governor has tackled. With regards to our nursing homes, our most vulnerable of the vulnerable, we saw the governor take decisive action to make sure that the staff was being tested consistently, and that's something that very few places have been able to accomplish. And so that has saved lives. And of course, we're concerned with the case count. Of course, we're concerned with every single death that we see here in the state of Florida. But that's something that this governor takes seriously, and that's why he's here today, to work with these mayors to see what support we can provide from the state perspective. But it is indeed a personal responsibility, a community responsibility, and a state responsibility. And I know that together we can tackle this and come out in the end stronger than ever. So thank you, Governor, for your leadership.
Thank you. Maybe Mayor Gimenez can start, but in terms of, you guys were basically closed for 2 months in terms of, at least you were essential businesses for 2 months, right? Mid-March to mid-May. You worked on, you had a huge amount of input for your phase 1. So you're still not, we're still not open fully. It was one step, but it's a slow process. How has businesses operating, how is that going? People getting put back to work? What's your sense on whether the spread is related to more business actions or socializing? And, how do you think people are doing now that some of them have the ability to go back to work?
I think, Governor, my gut tells me that the spread was due to social activity. It started, and we saw it with young people right around the beginning of June, I think, and there were things that all kind of clashed together. You had graduations, you had kids going out of school, you had college kids out of school, you had demonstrations, right, that were happening here, and thousands of mostly young people in the streets together, a lot of them not wearing masks. And so, I'm not pointing my finger at any one thing, I'm just saying it's a combination of things. And then we saw images of certain businesses that were converting themselves from, say, a restaurant into a bar afterwards, and people not wearing their masks, people not social distancing, basically, enjoying themselves. And what I said, young people being young people, And so I think that's where it started. I don't believe that it really started with businesses. I think that's what happened. It was a social activity. And so we took the steps of creating a curfew. That's one of the first things we did a couple of weeks ago. A curfew to try to curb social activity, not only in places of business, but also we also feel that there were house parties, people getting together. This community, maybe unlike other communities, a lot of your family in this community is actually in this community. We're not really spread out all over the place, and so you have your children and your grandchildren. They're all here. Okay, they're not some other state, and so you tend to get together, and it's pretty family-oriented community. That's what makes this community so great. And so I think that also, as the young kids started to socialize, then they started bringing it into the home, and then obviously we have to take the steps of closing those places where you had a lot of people together. The bars had never been open here, by the way.
Right.
Okay, the discotheques and the nightclubs have never been open here, but then. People being resourceful. If I don't have a place to go, I'll make a place to go. Okay.
Yeah, I heard around the state people say like they're renting out like warehouse space or whatever and doing like different things.
We have problems with Airbnb party houses here. It's been a problem, not just because of this pandemic, but actually that, and then the things that we did. Curfew, the places of assembly, casinos, bowling alleys, movie theaters, those kind of places were closed. We closed the interior spaces of restaurants because you have to take your mask off to eat, all right? And it becomes an inherently dangerous, thing. So that's where I think it started. Now we're trying to keep it down. The message has to be, we can't have these house parties. We can't have these places where people are congregating, where they're letting down their guard, drinking, etc. And unfortunately, since the young kids, started infecting each other, we see the results as more older folks are now going into the hospital because they were exactly what we feared, that they were going to take it to their parents, that they were going to take it to their grandparents, and so. We need to take the steps that we've taken so far. Hopefully now the message will be out. Hopefully this positivity rate will go down. Hopefully we can get less people into the hospital and we don't have to take further measures. One thing we did do early on, Mayor Gelber, is we have a program right now where we have close to 80,000 seniors that get their meal taken to them at their home, and that's been since almost like the beginning of this pandemic, to keep those seniors safe as much as possible. I think that if we hadn't done that, we would have much higher numbers.
No
And
doubt.
so that's where I think it started, and the numbers kind of prove it because the positivity rate on the youngs, it just shot up like a rocket
it
right in
just-
the middle of June.
I mean, it just seemed, because, I remember you were working on like kind of your phase one, and it seems like when people followed the guidelines, you guys were fine.
Yes.
You never had pubs, but people would convert it into that and do these dance parties and stuff. And so it's
Yep.
just the importance of just, following the guidelines. They're there for you. You consulted all these physicians,
Yeah.
business people, the community, and, you're not doing that just for kicks. I mean, you're doing it for a reason to be able to minimize risk of an outbreak. And I remember how thorough it was. And it just seems to me from looking, not only Miami, but around the state is, both state and local have had, certain guidelines. And when people follow them, we've tended to do pretty good. And I think that that'll be the case here. What are you guys seeing about, businesses operating? I know there were businesses that were closed for a while. Now you have more open, presumably more people back to work. How is that working out?
Yeah, thank you, Governor. And I think that the businesses are very, very important. And I think that my experience has been that they really were cooperating, whether it was, an indoor business or I found, at least in our municipality, that there were two things that were happening all the time. Number one, they prepared, they followed the rules as set by the county, set by the state, the expenses that came along with it. They were cooperating even as far as the number of people that could be in the interior. And I'm going to tell you something that's very interesting. If the business wasn't cooperating, I was getting emails from constituents that were going there or workers that worked in that business. Many times sending it anonymously, but telling me, Mayor, this site is in your city, and they're not cooperating. And we'd send our code compliance and our police out there. And, I found that, similar to Mayor Gimenez, that I don't think the spike came from the opening of the businesses. I do think, though, moving forward, now that we have you here, that I think economically, what I have seen also is that some of these businesses will not come back with the same number of employees they had. They have figured out that they can actually do this, even at a more, let's say it at a not 100% rate, but with fewer employees. And I think we're going to have a situation economically that we're going to have to deal with statewide. And we certainly are going to have to deal with it beyond the other financial issues we're going to have as municipalities and as a county economically from the drop in revenue. We're going to have people that are not going to go back to work. This is not a short-term issue. And I know that that gets talked a lot about, but it's a much more complex issue than maybe we've recognized.
No, I agree, and I think you just from like a commercial real estate, you had a lot of teleworking going on. I've talked to major business, said, we haven't missed a beat with having 90% teleworking. Well, okay, are you going to need to have that big building, in an expensive part of town? I mean, people are going to, so there's going to be a lot of changes that happen.
He's going to look like after, all right? And this virus obviously was a health issue, but this virus is a huge disruptor in the economy, a long-term disruptor in the economy. And, no better example than what's happening right here in this county. 6,000 of our employees are working out of home. This is, like I told you, this is about the fourth time I've come up here in the last 3 months, okay? I used to be here every single day. And I found that I'm just as productive, probably more productive at my home than I am, here. And I think a lot of employers are finding that's the case, and things are going to change. As Mayor Gelber and Suarez says, we're economy based on, getting together, et cetera. One of the things that I think is going to suffer, I think that we're not going to have as many business travelers coming to Miami-Dade. That means fewer people going into our hotels, et cetera. We obviously are the cruise capital of the world. Our cruise ships are 0 passengers right now. And so we have to establish that cruising is going to be not only, going to be viable, but also it's going to be safe, because that brings in about 5 million people to Miami-Dade County every year. Our airport is the #1 economic generator of this town. And if you have fewer people traveling for business, you're going to have fewer passengers, and so that's going to be affected also. And then as if you look out the window here, you see a lot of buildings that are office buildings. And so the question is going to be, how many of those office buildings, which are pretty full right now, okay, and they provide tax base for us, are going to be full in about a year or so when the lease is up. And a lot of those businesses have been operating from home pretty well. So, the economy is something that I'm kind of worried about in the future. It is disruptive, and usually when you have a disruptor, you'll find a way. Some other things will take its place, right? But without a doubt, this virus has taught us a different way to operate, a different way of being. It's also taught us a different way to teach kids. Not as good as the traditional, but it's something that we'll have to work out with the superintendent what we're going to do. But things aren't going to be the same. They're going to be different from now on.
Yeah, I agree with Mayor Gimenez on the issue of the impact it's going to have across the board and the interconnectivity, as Mayor Gelber mentioned. Those cruise lines and those airline businesses, many are headquartered in my city. And they are certainly going to be, the employees there that live in Dade County, and some that come from Broward will also be impacted as we move forward. And that's kind of the same thing that I see across at the school system. My wife, as I mentioned to you, has been a longtime special needs teacher, elementary school children. And we have our youngest, our 10-year-old daughter, who is a regular student at her school in the Dade County Public School System. There's no doubt that for the younger kids, learning in person is probably, and all the studies have shown, is probably preferable. And I saw let's call it the experience she had these last couple of months since we shut down. It was complicated, in particular in the special needs area, to be able to deal with the number of kids you've got to deal with at one time via technological aspect, simply because sometimes the parents aren't there, sometimes, there are different levels, the things along that type. But I also saw my own 10-year-old daughter, our own 10-year-old daughter also, the ability to, the time spent on learning probably wasn't as extensive. Having said that, I would tell you, going to your question, Governor, that there's great concern, some of the parents, that if their children were to go to school, whether the science says it or not, there are people that are afraid to send their children to school and probably prefer a hybrid option at the very least. We understand that that decision is really up to the superintendent. I know Mayor Gimenez, and he will work on that. And the hybrid option may seem the most reasonable one at this point. But I do think there is concern from parents. There are some parents that understand, hey, I've got to work, and my kids learn better in that environment. But many others are saying, I don't feel comfortable. I see these numbers going up, and it's not just the child I'm concerned with, Mayor. It's maybe your wife is a teacher and she gets it from somebody else, or maybe the janitor or the principal. So I would tell you there are concerns, and it's not as clear as maybe we would like it to be. Now, maybe as we move forward, and maybe in August we're having the same discussion, the numbers are coming down, and this goes back again to public confidence in the process. If the public confidence is there, then I think the decision is easier. If we are where we're at today, I think there's a lot of concern from parents.
Yeah, Mayor, I echo your sentiments exactly. In my community, it appears that people take safety-first approach. Very hesitant to going back to school, particularly with the numbers going in the direction they're going. And certainly a hybrid option is something that they would prefer. Again, it's a safety-first approach. Mayor Gelber suggested even starting the school year later, which would give everybody a lot more confidence, but they don't like it. The fact that they have to not put the kids in school, but they'd almost prefer not to in the situation we're in. And this is also a good time, almost a paradigm shift in the way we do our business. We're probably going to end up ultimately rethinking everything we do, from the way our own businesses operate, to the way we operate mass transit, to the way we deal with retail, commercial, zoning, for instance. So I don't think it's time to discuss that just yet. I mean, those are the conversations that will result once we've contained, controlled, and eradicated this disease. But certainly we all believe in the future there's going to be a different way of doing the essential pieces of business in the coming years.
Great. I know the Jewish day schools probably want to get back, right?
Yeah, the Jewish day schools are and most of the private schools are in a really tough spot because financially, if they can't reopen, they can crumble, and they're always on tight financial footing because of the amount of scholarships that are given out. But to answer your question specifically, is really whether or not homeschooling or virtual schooling works is really a child-specific question, and you could see it within my own home and in my children. But we also have to remember, and it's hard for any of us to get our minds around it, which is that generation operates very differently than even my generation or other generations that are in this room, in their comfort on computers and their comforts with online and virtual, connecting even socially with other people. So I don't think we have to be afraid of the technology. I think it's something we have to embrace. I think, of course, with special needs students aside, that's a group that specifically needs to have in-person school, and there have to be ways to work around that. I think the most important thing that applies to every student in this state is that no student will do well in any scenario where they have to go to school, and then if there's one infection, then they have to go home for 2 weeks, and they have to come back and forth. And those are the plans that we're seeing from a lot of these schools, because they really don't have much of another choice. But I firmly believe that we need to come up with a predictable plan which would work under any scenario. This is what we're going to go through for the year. That will allow employees and employers to work out the details that somewhere maybe the state or you, Governor, through executive orders can help work out to give people the flexibility they may need to work from home if they have to, if their kids have to be at home, but also will allow students to flourish if they have a plan, and parents and teachers together can work together to have a successful year. We don't want to write off a year for any child.
Do the parents want them back, or are they?
So
Split?
it's very timely. Last night I was up with my wife for 4 hours talking to different parents on this exact issue. It's split. I mean, people are very afraid to send their kids back to school. they're very nervous with the uncertainty on all the plans that are being presented, and they just want to know what are the plans so they can make their choices. I mean, there's people that are signing up for FLVS all over the county now, and also Miami-Dade has their own online program, really just to have the option even at this point.
Well, yeah, no, look, we've always said, I mean, if a parent prefers virtual, then they need to be permitted to do the kid virtually. I mean, I think that's very reasonable and should be the case. So what's Miami Beach? What's the community sense there?
Well, the community sense in the Gelber household, because I have a high school kid and I have 2 college-age girls, and I don't even want to talk about universities, because there is no question in my mind that when my daughter returns to Michigan and my mother just graduated, but college campuses, I think, are going to be unconstrained in terms of the spread. I don't see how anyone gets their arms around that, because it's a cohort that literally doesn't listen almost instinctively to us. At least I have found that experience in my home. But I want to address something, because I think it's a good example. I don't think the messaging on this has been great for this reason. You know, everybody wants their kids back in school. It's so important to the economy. People can't go to work because their kids are at home. So obviously everybody wants that. But the problem is that when we you know, like the White House said the other day, they're going to withhold money if you don't, if we don't open up our schools 5 days a week. And even the messaging statewide is of concern to me, because I agree that parents have to have the choice about their children's safety and future. But we do send a message to them when we say to them, we're going to open up your schools. We let them know that it's safe for them. And I'm not sure all of our parents feel like they know, frankly, if it's going to be safe or not. The question I get from everybody is it safe? And I immediately say, I was a federal prosecutor, I'm not a doctor. And I send them, but I try to give them the information, and in my own messaging, I have included video clips from pediatricians who are knowledgeable on this. They have to be given the information, but they shouldn't be telegraphed through messaging that it's just fine to send your kids to school right now. Because until doctors tell me it's fine to send my kids to school, until health experts say it's good for the community, there's enough risk and only a little risk such that you ought to do it or you ought to consider doing it. Till we get that from experts, we shouldn't be sending mandates out into the world, because that telegraphs one thing that we don't want to telegraph, which is, go ahead, it's fine, the green light is out, because I don't think that's helpful. Well,
I think it's a matter of, there's risks and everything. What's the level of risk to kids, to school-age kids? And I think, we've seen that now with enough experience to know that the risk is fortunately low. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't other things. There doesn't mean that you're not dealing, with the adults. But, I do think that it's been pretty clear in the data, and I don't think very many pediatricians would say elsewhere that, particularly absent a significant comorbidity for whatever reason, those 18 and under are at significantly less risk than certainly the 65 and under, and even the general population. That is just something that I think that we should understand. I think that should be put out there. And I don't think that we should try to scare parents and act like somehow that this is more of a threat to their kids than it actually is. It's a serious pathogen overall, but for whatever reason, the kids are at lower risk. And I think we've looked at also a lot of the studies that have been done in Europe, and now they have experience with kids being in school about are kids effective transmitters. When we did the schools in mid-March, people kind of understood, well, I think a lot of parents were really concerned, understandably, because it was a new pathogen, but the data was pretty clear about the risk to the kids, but the transmission was something that was not really well known. And an influenza outbreak, that's like the primary way it spreads throughout the community is in schools, take it to their parents, their teachers, and all that stuff. And they're just not finding the kids to be major vectors. So again, that doesn't mean that answers everything, but I do think that those two things are pretty clear. That's why the CDC director has said, there's more risk not opening them than opening them. And that's why obviously other folks, are looking to do that. I've also, told the mayor, this is obviously a different situation here than some other parts of the state. But fortunately, for whatever reason, the Spanish flu wasn't like this. Hell, H1N1 was more than this has been for under 18. But that is, fortunately, they're at very, very low risk.
But 16, 17, and 18-year-olds are part of the high school cohort. And I guess my point is that I think our superintendent is going to be making this decision with exactly the kinds of considerations you're talking about. So rather than say we're all doing it, I think it's important to not suggest that we have to do it, notwithstanding anything. I think it's important to message and let that happen in our county, because right now I think there is a lot of conflict because people were listening to the Secretary of Education say everybody's going to have to go to school. And some people are saying, well, my 16 and 17-year-old, my 18-year-old is a high school senior. Am I going to have to send them to school or or violate the law? And
No. That we know that. I mean I've been very clear in Florida under the circumstances. Every parent has the option to make these decisions, and no parent should be forced. They have to make decisions about what they think would be a good environment for the student, and if virtual is the decision, then they have every right to do that, and I think that needs to be standard, and I think that is something that without question we're going to embrace.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yeah, I would. Sorry, we're using school as this generic term because it's kids going to school, but when you break it down into its component parts, it's cafeteria workers, and it's them touching the same keyboards, and it's their personal interactions, and it's teachers, and it's bus drivers, and there's so many other things, and we know so little about this disease. And I know there's been some study on this, but this conversation goes, when you say there's a minimal risk, this conversation goes terribly different if one child contracts COVID-19 in a school and dies. If one child, I can't imagine having this conversation. So we have a very, very capable superintendent, Alberto Cavallo, my school board member, Steve Gallen. I know they're going to consider all of those things, but it's very difficult as a parent. And this is a parent who I really want my son to be back in school. And he really wants to be back in school. I think all parents want their kids back in school. The question is, how do we send them there, and there's this thing there that we can't see, that the chances are low, but it could affect them? How do we make that decision? And so I think that you're right. It should be every parent's choice, and if a parent chooses virtual school, there should be no penalty for that. But then we have to consider as a government, and from a government perspective, and the school board, I guess, is going to have to tackle this, and you as the governor are going to have to tackle this, how you fund that halfway system. Because when you start opening up those schools, that means there are going to be some extra cleaning requirements, some extra safety requirements, some extra precautions that have to be taken.
Oh,
that
man.
we haven't contemplated.
CARES Act money has been, it's on the way.
I think we're going to probably need some more, and please tell them that in Washington, we're going to need some more. Those are things that we have to look at from our perspective, from an educational perspective. The superintendent, and I hate to give people the impression out there in the public that we're going to make this decision, because they actually think that mayors are like the rulers of the entire world. They think we run the Social Security system, and they think we run everything, and we don't. This is going to be in their purview. But the things that they have to consider are massive. They're massive, and I think it's very difficult knowing as little as we do about the novel COVID-19 virus.
Thank you, Governor. I think one of the things that we talked about in the room back there is that we need to do this, hopefully once a week. In other words, have this kind of conversation if you can, once a week. And I think the next time we have it, probably should be sitting, not that I don't love seeing my good friend Carlos Migoya, but maybe the superintendent should be sitting at that chair, and we should have a conversation that is based, primarily about this issue. As a parent, I can tell you you always start this discussion as a parent. I have young children like you do. My wife is probably not going to put our 2-year-old in preschool, and she was showing me desks that she was thinking of buying for my son's room so he can learn virtually. And so that's always where you sort of start the conversation. I know that there's a lot of families in our community that don't have the resources, right, to be able to work and provide for their own families and at the same time have sort of in-home teaching. And I think that's a struggle, and that's certainly a big issue. But I do think one of the things that the superintendent said on national television the other day that I found interesting was he said that under the CDC gating criteria, the schools would not be open under phase one. And we are still sort of under phase one. And I know that, schools are 6 weeks away, and things change, and they have to change. Because I'll tell you, the last thought that I had, and before COVID, everybody wanted to come to Miami. Everybody wanted to come to Miami. I mean, we were getting people from New York, from other parts of the world in droves. I think my first year as mayor, we grew 8.5%. My second year, we grew 10.5%. And even with COVID, we grew about 6.5% this year. But right now, we have a situation where the news that is coming out of Miami is not positive news. You know what one of our epidemiologists said the other day about the acuteness of this crisis? And I think we have somewhere between 1 week and 4 weeks to get this thing under control. Otherwise, we're going to have to take some very dramatic measures here. And I think that's something that we should message together, frankly, because I think part of the issue is here, and what we should need to communicate is to Carlos's point, which is aggressive noncompliance is not only going to be not acceptable, but it's going to lead us down a path where we're going to have to take aggressive steps. And I don't know whether we're going to take that step in a week. I don't know if we're going to take that step in 2 weeks, but just from listening to everybody here, there's sort of a barometer of 1 to 4 weeks where we're going to have to take some dramatic steps if we don't change the trajectory of this. So I think that's something that our public needs to know so that they understand the severity of where this is going if we don't change that trajectory.
No, I agree. Just a couple. One, just when the White House came out with the gating criteria, that was, I think, the middle of April. I think there's been a lot of information that's come out, particularly about school kids with this since then. I'm not saying it doesn't change, but there's, I think the CDC has been now more interested with the schools and understanding the risk not to do it, for that. And I'd also say, we never closed daycares in Florida, and you didn't do it in Dade either. Now, some obviously weren't operating. It was just an issue of, some of the parents were working from home, this or that. But, we never had major problems, with daycares. I don't think you guys did.
No, we didn't.
Particularly with young kids infecting adults. I don't think we had examples of that. So I just put that out there because, these are kids that were being dropped off every day, young kids. This is March, April. When we were doing the first kind of wave of this, and things were safe. I know they obviously did things to make it safe. So I think it certainly for that area, CDC recommended that we close the daycares, but I didn't see how we could do that and function. And I also was seeing the data come in from some of these other countries and seeing that the young kids were at very low risk. And so we thought that it could be done safely, and it was done safely, and it was done here safely as well. So that's an important thing. Well, look, I just want to thank you guys. You guys are leaders in your community, and I just want you to know that as we deal with this, you have my support on what you're doing. I don't have to agree with you on everything, or you don't have to agree with me on everything, but you're the leaders at place in this time, and so your program that's out there, people need to follow it. They should do it, follow the regulations, wear the facial covering, socially distance, making sure that we're protecting our elderly. Doing those things and just having the sense of purpose about it will make a huge difference. In your communities, I want your folks following your leadership when you're putting things out. And I think that's very, very important. And I think if people do that, I think you're going to see improvement here. I also would just say, look, this is a challenge. I know there's a lot of people that are anxious, and I get it, and I know a lot of people up here get it. But we're absolutely going to be able to get through this. This is a very resilient community, and the folks who want to come to Miami, they're going to still want to come to Miami because they're going to see that this is a very, very strong group of people, both at the county and all your city levels. And so we're here for you. We view this, as I said at the beginning, as kind of the focal point of the response effort at this point. We do have issues throughout the rest of the state. We're helping with personnel, a whole bunch of other stuff there as well. But just given some of the numbers, we really feel it's important to take a stand now and to really turn this thing around, and it just requires action and action now. So thank you guys for your leadership, and thank you for willingness to come here and share your views. And it really helps me to be able to hear the different perspectives, not only, of course, from around the state as I travel, but just within this one great, big, diverse county, the differences in terms of some of the constituencies you represent in your area. So thank you, and Mayor, thanks again for bringing us together.
Thank you, Governor. We really appreciate it.
Take a couple of questions.
I have a two-pronged question. One is, what are the current metrics that would trigger at this point rolling back to a safer at home style status? And two, you had said the mayors will make it happen, but the mayors aren't recipients of the city coffers of federal dollars. From what we understand, the state has received $492 million for contact tracing, for testing. And contact tracing, while maybe not the silver bullet, we know from public health experts it's one of the key tools in the toolkit that these mayors need to get the data they need to inform strategic decision making. So my question is, if you have $492 million to build a robust contact tracing program, but we currently don't have it, what happens to the money? Why don't we have it?
So remember I told you last week that I approved, the Department of Health came up with a plan for not just contact tracing, but other things. So that's $38 million. So that's been approved, and they can give you the details on that plan, if you want.
After hearing Mighty Mayor Suarez say we need hundreds more, we know we got the 250 last week.
Well, this will be significant, and I think there's a couple things that one is, to go out and get them. It's not like they just show up, mail order 24 hours. You got to go, you got to do background checks, all stuff. What some communities are doing is they're enlisting the support of some of the students who are in like graduate or medical school type, to do this. I know Tampa, we were talking with some of the folks over there. They were working on maybe getting something together, and so using that type of horsepower, I think makes a lot of sense. So, but the state is in for, in for a penny, in for a pound. That's a big investment. That's never happened, in the state before. And there were different levels of funding, and this was the most robust that was presented to me of the several levels. And so I approved it. So we are doing it, and I think it'll be important. Particularly, I think as Carlos said, what Mayor Suarez said, I think is right. Right now, it probably does best by giving us the information. It's spread enough that you're not going to be able. You really just need to mitigate and bend this curve a different direction. Once you do that, then as an outbreak happens, to be able to do that can be beneficial. It's still challenging when you have an illness that's largely asymptomatic, because many people who get it either don't know they have it or have very, very mild symptoms. But still, it can be effective. But I think with the data, that's very, very important, because, and what we find when we get this information is just the outsized role of family transmission. And you see it, and I think just as Mayor Gimenez said, in Miami-Dade, one of the reasons you have more spread is because you have way more family members that live in the same area. And so you get together with extended family. You look at some of these other counties that have had the explosion of the 2030s, you don't see as many bleeding into the senior population. I think if you look demographically, some of those areas, they don't have where they would have major extended families be in the same community. And so there's kind of a natural buffer to the spread and to the clinical consequences. Here, just by the nature of living conditions, family arrangements, you kind of have a natural accelerator for the spread. And, I think we understood that when they were talking about Memorial Day, early June, all this stuff. Right. Look, COVID we had a 5% positivity or less from May 1st until the middle of June in the state of Florida. Dade was consistently going down. I think people thought, hey, we'd kind of gone through it, and then that's that. Well, now I think people understand the significance, and I think that they will. Heed the message, that you've been putting out and that we've been putting out.
Governor, Window 51, you're all presenting a very unified stance about communication, about coming together. Why wasn't the mayor of Hialeah allowed in, the second largest city in the county?
I don't know. I wasn't involved. I didn't. I don't know. I wasn't personally the one that invited the folks. So.
CNN got a statement saying that your fax not allowed enter into the building. He's outside.
Somebody from your.
Is he here?
Yeah, you
All right.
heard.
Well, I'm happy to meet with them. I mean, yeah, no, Hialeah is a great town. I've got a lot of great friends there, and I know they've had a tough go at, with some of this outbreak, really for quite a long time. And I think it does go back to some of the stuff that we've talked about with the close contacts or whatever. So I'm happy to meet with them and work with them. I know that Senator Diaz asked us early on to send testing resources down there, and we did send a significant amount of testing resources down there and have worked with folks in Hialeah, like Senator Diaz in particular, and like the Speaker, Speaker Oliva. It's a big part of his constituency as well.
Start from the left to right over there.
A great deal of time and effort has been spent on unity and uniform messaging. There are some mayors in this room who disagree with the county mayor's decision to close indoor dining. Marco Rubio yesterday on CNBC said he didn't think that some of these search cases were taking place because of parks and beaches. And so actionably, is there one, two, or three things that you've heard from today that would lead you to change your approach to Americans?
Well, those were not things that I had done. You're saying those are things that that the mayor. Yeah. So here's what I would say, and I've approached it this way from the very beginning. We have 5 states in one, basically, and not just South Florida being one, but really Miami-Dade is different than Broward and Palm Beach, and we knew that from the beginning, and we worked with Mayor Gimenez from early March on, and I've always tried to make sure that locals, particularly in areas like Miami-Dade, which are different to some other parts of the state, to have them be able to fashion these policies in ways that made sense for them. Some of the things that Mayor Gimenez has done here, if he were the mayor of Destin, Florida, he probably would not have done, because it's just a different situation. And there's nothing wrong with that. The outbreak here is different. The demographics are different, particularly with the multi-generational families. And so, you got to do things like that. So I'm looking around the state. If you look at the percent that are testing positive outside of South Florida, it's gotten to, it's been 9, 10, 11%, which is 2 weeks ago, the rest of the state was pretty close to South Florida. So it's gone down. It's gone down. We've seen a few percent down now for 4 or 5 days. We want to continue doing that. There are some positive signs in some different pockets across the state, which is good. Obviously, we're monitoring this every day. But I would definitely say that the contours of the outbreak are just simply different in Dade, and not only than some other places like Central Florida or Northwest Florida. I mean, even different than Broward right now. I mean, Broward is having cases, but if you look at their hospitalizations, a chunk of those are Miami-Dade County residents who are going particularly to the hospitals in southern Broward County. And then if you look at Palm Beach, when we kind of went into May, Broward and Dade really trended down throughout May and into the beginning of June. Palm Beach had some outbreaks. They had some agriculture outbreaks, some of the farm workers and day laborers, and so their hospitalizations were rising, not out of control, but they were. Now you look, Dade is having a lot of traffic. Palm Beach has seen a little increase, but they are, I think I would say, more stable. So these are just things you got to look at, on kind of a regional basis or even a county by county basis. Yes, sir.
Like Mayor Gilbert pointed out, the school system is the largest employer in the county. With your administration, if the local school system decides to have no in-person learning, close all the school buildings, would that be allowed under your administration?
So look, my view is we should all want kids back in school, okay? That should be the goal. Part of it is because of the low risk, low transmission. It's interesting, Sweden never really closed down. They had schools in, and they said that it didn't contribute at all to the community spread, because they clearly had community spread going on. So I think, let's just understand, at the same time, parents have a right to opt for virtual. I just think it's a anxious time. There's a lot of fear out there. Look, I think some of this fear is unfounded in terms of the facts, particularly when it relates to the risk to school-age kids. I've tried to communicate that, but I understand. Look, my own wife, our kids aren't school-age yet. I tell her, I was like they are at zero risk. I'd have no problem putting them in. And I think I've convinced her. She said she would do it too now. But initially, she just, because it's just your kids, and that's just how you feel. It's an emotional, natural response to that. But I think that the damage, we just have to be honest about, everyone focuses on what we're doing with the virus, very important, but we also have to focus on what's the fallout from some of the actions that could be taken. So if you say no chance of being in person, what is that going to do to academic development, social development? What's that going to do just in terms of kids? You know, the school system is one of the places where a child that's being abused will go for refuge, and then they end up, action can be taken. The teachers that are mentors, the coaches. What about having football season? Things like that. We've got a lot of young kids who this is their ticket to be able to go to college through athletics. What happens to all those dreams and all those hopes and all those aspirations? And that is something that's majorly important to me. The growth and development of our school kids is majorly important to me. And I just look to think about, like, when I was in high school, if you would have just canceled my season and my year, that would have been big time devastating for me, and I think that's probably true for a lot of people. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't considerations. It doesn't mean that you don't do things to make safety important, because it is. But my view is that the posture should be, you know, let's do what we can to do what's best for the kids. And that ultimate result may look different in Miami-Dade, you know, than it does in Okaloosa or St. Johns counties, and that's okay. But I think to just say, you know, we're just not ever bringing them back kind of deal, particularly to do that now, I think that would be very premature.
You wouldn't let them close the building?
Look, we want to see opportunity for the students, and we want to see, obviously with a parental choice, for them to be able to exercise that for distance learning if they want. But I think we just have to give as many opportunities for kids as possible. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Governor. The focus of this has been a unified message, and we ended this by saying that it requires action. One of the things that I think Mayor Gelder pointed out, one of the actions that you could take today is to require a mask statewide. Are you ready to make that and take that action?
So I've said we should follow what the mayor's done here in Miami-Dade. You know, we have different areas of the state that are performing differently. Some of them, quite frankly, are doing pretty well, or doing a lot better. And so we want to continue doing that. But, you know, I can tell the folks of Miami-Dade that, you know, they should follow the ordinance that Mayor Gimenez has put out. And they should do that as well as with the municipalities. You know, it's very, very important. But I also recognize that the outbreak here is a little bit different than what we're dealing with some other places. And so I like doing the bottom-up approach. And believe me, I've consulted with people in different parts of the state. I've consulted with them about enforcement. I've talked with different sheriffs about what they would or wouldn't do. And I think that this is, you know, what we're doing is the right approach for the state.
You're wearing a mask today, Governor. Can you tell us what compels you to wear a mask today?
Anytime I'm in an area that requires it, I always do it.
And I guess finally, for the sake of Floridians, this is about you. What about Floridians doing it for Floridians? It's not so much the Southeast.
Well, no, well, that's much different than saying impose criminal penalties. I mean, you're telling me I should criminalize people for not doing it statewide, and that would be, you know, that's a lot different situation. We went from the beginning of May, when we did our Phase 1 guidelines, and we did things like, actually, it's still in Phase 1 here, 10-person gathering limit. You know, that's in effect. That actually has the force of law if they wanted to do it. Now, I think anyone that's been awake for the last 6 weeks has seen more than 10 people gathering in various ways here in Miami and some other places. But the Phase 1, that's still there. We also said, you know, social distance is the number one, the physical distance, but a facial covering when you can't do that. And so that's been the recommendation from the very beginning. And I think that that's served a lot of those other areas well. Here, they did this in April, I think. You've had it for what, 3 months?
I'm sorry, the Phase 1?
No, you've done the face mask since April?
No, the facial covering was imposed a long time ago, since April, and then we allowed for a while not to have facial covering outdoors as long as you maintain your social distancing, and then recently we said facial covering everywhere.
And then
Just the metrics, where are we right now? It's the number one question viewers have. It's interesting to hear a new timeline out of this, looking at 1 to 4 weeks if things don't change the trajectory, but what are the new metrics that are guiding you all on whether to go back to a county-wide safer at home status?
There isn't a metric right now. We're going to be looking at, can we establish a metric that we can publish to the community to say, look, if we don't get to this point by this time, we're going to have to take additional measures. That's something that myself and the mayors in this room are going to have to discuss with our medical experts to see where that could be. Well, we don't have that right now. Obviously, we don't want to get there, but we need to establish that. So nothing came out of this meeting that established that metric.
Great. Well, I'm going to thank everyone for coming. You guys, I know, have been working incredibly hard since February, really. A lot of you, I remember seeing you working hard. So thank you for your work. We're here to help. I know we're going to continue to provide resources, and we appreciate your input very much. So thank you.
Mayor, there's some questions that after maybe the lieutenant governor could respond.
Thanks.
Want to say goodbye and then back?
Yeah, I'll come back.
Can we hit a,
Ok, si quieren empezar, yo estoy lista.
Pero la vicegobernadora.
Sí, sí, porque me tengo que ir.
Primero fue que básicamente parte de los alcaldes le pidieron hoy al gobernador un mensaje abogado. Le dijeron, el alcalde Suárez le dijo que por qué no había una estrategia a largo plazo, o ellos tienen la sensación de que no hay una estrategia a largo plazo. ¿Qué responde la oficina del gobernador a esto que han pedido los alcaldes?
Bueno, yo creo que el compromiso del gobernador de estar aquí hoy día, no solo con el alcalde del condado, pero con los alcaldes de diferentes ciudades aquí en este condado, que sabemos que es muy diverso. Lo que es la estrategia a largo plazo, obviamente sí tenemos estrategia de largo plazo, pero lo que es el enfoque inmediato en este momento es cómo contener este virus, cómo contener la propagación. Y lo que hemos escuchado, no solo del gobernador, pero de los alcaldes, es buscar la manera de insistir en lo que es los mensajes que hemos estado desde el principio, pero que ahora aún son más importantes. Por ejemplo, lo que es la distancia social, lo que es las mascarillas aquí en este condado y en los condados donde tienen la ordenanza. Y también asegurar que estamos buscando la manera de trabajar juntos y buscar lo que es las inquietudes y los desafíos que tienen las diferentes ciudades o los condados tal como este, donde la propagación está tan extensiva.
Estaban comentando la importancia sobre los rastreadores de contacto. Lo han comentado varios de los alcaldes. Nos han hecho una petición a lo que es el gobierno de la Florida. ¿Qué dirías al respecto?
Sí, y de nuevo, eso es porque reuniones tal como estas son tan importantes, porque el gobernador obviamente está viajando por todas partes del estado y escuchando a los diferentes expertos, tanto los expertos de salud como a los expertos de sus condados. Y yo creo que la petición de los contact tracers, lo que hemos escuchado aquí, aún por medio de varios de los alcaldes, es algo que nosotros sabemos desde el principio que es importante. Por eso el Departamento de Salud, yo diría que hace más de 2 o 3 meses, estuvo involucrado con las universidades, buscando más ayuda en lo que es para proveer ese servicio. El gobernador indicó que el aprobado $138 millones, me parece que fue la cifra que dio, para traer esos contact tracers. No solo son contact tracers, es un equipo entero, enfermeros, contact tracers, personas que están poniendo la información en las computadoras. Es un equipo, no es una persona sola y ya se completó el trabajo de contact tracing. Es algo que es un equipo, por eso también ha trabajado con el alcalde. El alcalde ha sido tan gentil para ayudar con lo que es los fondos, pero sí es algo que viene, sí es algo que ya tenemos, pero de nuevo, parte de los desafíos es la demora en recibir los resultados. Al principio era muy difícil tratar de buscar una prueba, muchas personas no podían buscar una prueba. Ahora el desafío es cómo reducir lo que es el tiempo que tenemos que esperar para recibir una prueba. Al inicio estaban diciendo las compañías privadas de los laboratorios de 48 horas a 72 horas. Ahora estamos viendo en muchos casos más de una semana. Es muy difícil hacer el trabajo de los contact tracers si no buscamos la manera de reducir ese tiempo.
Gobernadora, el gobernador habla del poco riesgo que tienen los niños pequeños si vuelven a la escuela. Aquí en Miami-Dade hay mucha preocupación por parte de los maestros, los empleados, los choferes de los autobuses, los padres, los abuelos. O sea, él parece que no entiende quizás la preocupación tan grande que hay aquí en Miami-Dade.
No, yo ni diría que él no entiende porque él es papá también. Obviamente él no vive en el condado de Miami-Dade, pero yo sí, yo soy madre. Tengo un hijo que va a empezar el 9º grado y le puedo decir que tanto es la preocupación yo como madre y yo como vicegobernadora. Pero sí lo que les quiero decir es que tenemos que buscar la manera de trabajar juntos. Aquí en este condado va a ser diferente, como él explicó. El condado de Miami-Dade tiene un virus, la propagación mucho más alta que un condado como Duval, como St. John's, otros condados del estado que tal vez pueden abrir sin problemas tal como los que vamos a tener aquí en este condado. Sí, lo que yo creo que es importante, yo sé que creo que mañana el superintendente tiene lo que es los resultados o el deadline para poder los padres informar sobre cuáles serían las decisiones de ellos. Es muy difícil hacer una decisión hoy día, no solo como madre, como maestro, como todos los alumnos, si no sabemos qué es lo que va a suceder de hoy en 5 o 6 semanas. Creo que aquí la fecha de empezar es agosto 24 y yo creo que mucho puede suceder y por eso escuchaste al alcalde Suárez decir de 1 a 4 semanas porque tenemos muchas decisiones que vamos a tener que hacer de nuevo, como padres, como empleados, como maestros, pero también tenemos que tomar en consideración, es una consideración muy grande y muy clave para muchas personas que trabajan duro, día tras día. Si la decisión es no abrir las escuelas, eso va a impactar no solo económicamente, que yo sé que es algo muy preocupante debido a todo lo que hemos tenido que sufrir aquí económicamente, pero también el aprendizaje. Yo sé, como madre de 3 hijos, pero el más pequeño es el que está en la escuela, eso es el aprendizaje. Ha sido muy difícil y hay muchas implicaciones, no solo lo que es la educación, pero todo lo que es el aspecto social. Y bueno, si no, con eso me despido. Muchas gracias.
Buenas.
Buenas. Lo has comentado antes en inglés, pero ¿podrías decir en español cuáles son esas inquietudes que has querido trasladar al gobernador sobre lo que te preocupa en la ciudad de Miami? ¿Qué necesitas? ¿Qué pides?
Lo que pedimos hoy son, primero, los rastreadores necesarios para efectivamente recibir la información que tenemos que recibir para tomar decisiones. Número 2, queríamos comunicarnos, yo creo que de una forma en comunión con todos los oficiales electos, esta urgencia que tenemos en este momento, que si la gente no sigue las reglas, es posible que vamos a tener que tomar decisiones mucho más difíciles que las que hemos tomado y medidas mucho más severas de lo que hemos tomado hasta este momento. Y yo creo que también, tercero, el objetivo era tener una conversación en cual todos los oficiales electos importantes, los alcaldes, el alcalde condal, el gobernador, están en el mismo sitio para tomar las decisiones difíciles que vamos a tener que tomar, porque yo creo que es sumamente importante. Todos los expertos dicen que el mensaje tiene que ser consistente, lo mayor posible. Y por eso yo creo que era muy importante que nosotros nos reuníamos de esta forma. Y yo espero que esta es solo la primera de varias reuniones que vamos a tener, porque como yo he explicado, yo creo que si en una semana, a 3 o 4 semanas nos vemos un mejoramiento bastante, es posible que vamos a tener que tomar decisiones muy difíciles.
Alcalde, buenas tardes. Alcalde, usted le dijo al gobernador que quisiera ver una estrategia a largo plazo. ¿Por qué siente un vacío? Usted dijo que todo lo vamos haciendo como al día, a medida que van saliendo los casos, pero usted siente ese vacío. ¿Usted cree que sí ha hecho falta un discurso organizado y unificado para todo el Estado a largo plazo?
Yo creo que los residentes tienen que entender que nosotros no tenemos un departamento de salud en la ciudad de Miami. Eso es algo que solo tiene el Estado de la Florida. Y por eso nosotros le pedimos no solo información a ellos, pero que ellos nos guían en las decisiones que tenemos que tomar, porque ellos tienen expertos. Lo que nosotros recibimos desde el punto de vista de un guía para tomar decisiones de abrir, era lo que habíamos recibido del el Centro de Control de Enfermedades Nacional, que era un plan para abrir si todos los factores cada 2 semanas estaban disminuyendo. Obviamente lo que hemos visto es que eso no ha sucedido, pero nunca vimos un plan revisado para estas nuevas realidades. Y yo creo que eso hubiera ayudado no solo para nosotros tomar decisiones, pero segundo, para comunicar cuándo vamos a ver, por ejemplo, un cierre nuevo o vamos a cerrar una industria. Y yo creo que eso también crea frustración por parte de los quienes han trabajado tanto, han gastado tanto dinero para ajustar sus propios negocios, para poder abrir y después recibir la información que se tienen que cerrar de nuevo. Así que yo creo que en el futuro, si podemos tener un plan lo más claro posible, entendiendo que todos los días las cosas, los factores cambian y tenemos que ser flexibles a cierto punto, si tendríamos un plan que yo creo que podemos desarrollar entre nosotros, con los expertos que tenemos, con los oficiales electos que están aquí en la mesa, yo creo que eso le daría mucho más, pondría a los residentes de nosotros mucho más confianza en lo que es, gracias, Erika, en lo que es nuestras decisiones, porque ven que hay estadísticas específicas que estamos siguiendo que son basados en lo que nos han dado los expertos.
Alcalde, ¿qué es lo que más quería ver por parte del gobernador hoy? ¿Qué es lo que más,
¿Perdón?
¿qué es lo que más quisiera pedirle hoy al gobernador? ¿Qué es lo que le pidió?
No, lo que esto era para dar un mensaje consistente aquí en el condado de Miami-Dade, que una conversación con alcaldes de los municipios y también conmigo en lo que estaba sucediendo aquí en el condado de Miami-Dade y lo que necesitábamos aquí nosotros del estado de la Florida. Muchos de nuestros alcaldes desean más, se llaman contact tracers, para tener más información. Como ha dicho el alcalde Suárez, se necesita, yo creo, más cooperación, pero también más información del Departamento de Salud del Estado de la Florida, para que sea mucho más coordinado. Lo que aprendí es que a veces en cuando hemos tenido reuniones con la misma gente, me han dado a mí diferentes datos que se le han dado a los otros alcaldes, y eso no puede suceder en el futuro. Así que lo que yo aprendí de él es que está aquí para ayudarnos, para dar los recursos necesarios para combatir este contagio aquí en el condado de Miami-Dade. Estoy muy agradecido al gobernador. Él y yo tenemos comunicación todos los días. Estamos al tanto de lo que estaba sucediendo aquí, y también lo agradezco también el apoyo que me ha dado a mí en lo que estamos haciendo aquí en el condado de Miami-Dade. Él nos ha dejado a nosotros tener mucho más, ser mucho más autónomos que el resto del estado. Él sabe que aquí la situación es completamente diferente que otras partes del estado.
Alcalde, algo que le preocupa a los televidentes o que nos preguntan mucho la situación de los hospitales. ¿Nos podría decir cómo están al día de hoy, que es lo último al respecto?
La última cifra, tenemos más de 2.000 personas que están en el hospital. No creció mucho de ayer a hoy, que es una noticia. Tuvimos más personas que también están en los cuartos de cuidado intensivo. Tenemos más de 400 ahí. Tenemos casi más de 200 personas que están en ventiladores. Así que esas cifras han subido bastante en las últimas 2 semanas. Por eso es que estamos aquí todos hablando en qué tenemos que hacer más. Por eso tomé las decisiones que tomé hace como una semana o 10 días, porque podía ver que esto estaba sucediendo y teníamos que tomar pasos más estrictos, no popular puede ser, pero yo tengo que tomar las decisiones que es necesaria para proteger la salud de nuestros residentes. Así que esas son las cifras. Vamos a ver en qué manera podemos empezar a reducir eso. Pero mira, no es nosotros, es todos nosotros. Y eso es el mensaje. Nosotros tenemos que cumplir con estas resoluciones. También, hasta adentro de nuestras casas, tenemos que tener cuidado también. ¿Por qué? Porque el nivel de contagio aquí ya está más de 25%. Es muy probable, si vive en un hogar con 4 personas, que puede ser una de ellas tenga el COVID-19. Y cuando alguien está en un hogar con una persona que tiene el COVID-19, este virus es súper contagioso, por eso es que es tan peligroso, porque es tan fácil de estar contaminado y es tan fácil pasar este virus de una persona a otra.
El director del Hospital Jackson, el señor Ligoya, dijo cuando estaba en el round table que aparte de los rastreadores, que como que no va a servir el tema de los rastreadores, no va a servir el tema de las pruebas, si el condado no saca a toda la policía, al Fire Rescue y a todo el mundo para la calle a enforzar el tema de las máscaras. Y lo pidió aquí abiertamente.
Sí.
Se lo había pedido ya a usted. ¿Usted ha considerado de pronto en sacar policía a la calle o...?
La policía está en la calle, porque acuérdate, un problema que tenemos aquí en el condado de Miami-Dade es que las regulaciones que yo tengo son criminal. Quiere decir que si tú violas las reglas de las máscaras, etcétera, te pueden poner en la cárcel, pero es difícil que una policía te lo va a poner en la cárcel por alguien que no tenga la máscara. Ahora, el día jueves van a pasar, yo espero que la comisión pasa lo que es un civil citation, que quiere decir que ahora con eso los bomberos y los otros inspectores pueden dar multas de $50 que no son criminal. Y eso es lo que estamos esperando, pero también hoy en día, todos los días, tenemos más de 6,000 inspecciones de la policía del condado de Miami-Dade y también otros inspectores salen para afuera para ver si hay violaciones en los negocios de las regulaciones que tenemos en el condado de Miami-Dade. Cuando se pasa esta ordenanza, va a tomar en efecto en 10 días después, y entonces vamos a sacar muchas más personas para empezar a enforzar el uso de la máscara adentro y afuera. Y si no tienes las máscaras puestas, puede ser que vas a tener una multa de $50. Sí, el enforzar estas medidas es lo importante, pero también eso llega a un punto. Al final, nosotros tenemos que cambiar cómo actuamos. Nosotros, tú, yo, la familia, todo el mundo, tenemos que parar y actuar de una manera diferente, utilizando las máscaras, lavándonos las manos, la distancia social. También paren de tener fiestas en las casas. Si lo tienen, háganlo de una manera que también mantiene la distancia con las máscaras, etcétera, de una manera segura. Eso es lo que necesitamos nosotros ahora.
Gracias.
Gracias a ustedes. Thank you very much.